Hey, people, welcome to another day of live Learn from the Pros. You know who I am, Jason Reynolds, otherwise known as Reds, and you're on my channel. So thanks for joining us today. If you haven't already done so, I'd love for you to subscribe and share and like and everything else that you do when you enjoy programming on a channel. Tell your friends about it. We do this every Wednesday. Learn from the pros. Always try to bring you the best guests that we can find. And today we have Ricky Ashford with us. Very excited to talk to him today. Very experienced front of house engineer, fellow digital user like myself. So we're gonna jump into it. But before we do so, if you haven't already done it, check out jasonreynoldsproaudio.com. Opt in for the free training so that you get an email every week and you know who our guest is ahead of time. Also, if you're looking for audio training and masterclasses, patreon.com/jasonreynoldsproaudio. We have a masterclass coming up on Tuesday. We do them bi-weekly, so you don't want to miss out on that. And you can go ahead and sign up right now because all the masterclasses that we've already done are available to you can watch them on demand, and we have a Discord chat where you can jump in and ask questions. So it's never too late to get signed up and join us on our masterclasses. So without further ado, let's bring in our guest for today, the man himself, Ricky Ashford. Ricky, what's up,
Hey,
man?
what's up, guys? How you guys doing?
Good, man. So we haven't known each other that long. Funny enough, we met in January of this year at NAM. You were kind of walking around with a mutual friend, Blair, and that's how we met. And that, funny enough, was the first time I was meeting Blair in person. We've only ever like connected on social media, so it's kind of interesting how our industry. It's a very small industry, right? Like we, you
Very.
know. It's not a ton of us out there doing it. So, we're obviously grateful to be able to do what we do. And thankfully, we chatted briefly before we came on the air, but things are starting to slowly open back up. There's finally light at the end of the COVID tunnel. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exciting times. I feel like a kid again. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. So, but why don't you go ahead and tell the viewers who you are, what you do, and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm Ricky Ashford. I'm the front of house engineer for a few artists. I do Keanu Lede. That's been my main artist for a while, but I'm also the front of house guy for Schoolboy Q. I do SZA, sometimes J Rock. I've done Lucky Day for a little while. Trying to see. That's a crazy question. Like every time I hear about, I'm like, who have I mixed for? Um, but yeah, those are just a few people off the bat. I mean, those are the artists that I'm usually working with. But yeah, I mean, I'm a front house engineer and I live in Alabama.
Nice.
And a lot of people think I live in LA, but I live in Alabama.
All
So,
right.
so yeah, I just work in LA a whole lot. But yeah,
Nice, nice. And one of the things we try to focus on this program, we tend to focus on a little bit less of the technical side and more of the intangibles and the journey, right? Because that's, for that's what a lot of people. I won't say anybody can push faders and twist knobs, but it's easier. It's an easier skill to learn than personality, for example. You know what I mean?
right,
So
right.
so, in terms of your journey being, have you always lived in Alabama, and what was that journey like for you breaking into the scene that predominantly, I guess, is run out of LA/New York, right? What was that journey like for you being a kid from Alabama?
Uh, it depends. Like, what do you want? The long version or the short version? I, I guess I'll just go. Just
Yeah,
stop.
yeah,
Like kind of going down this weird rabbit hole. But so in Alabama, obviously, I'm pretty sure every engineer can count on probably one hand or probably no hands how many times they've done a show in Alabama. Um,
right,
so the gist of saying that is that it's not really an environment or a type of market down here where touring is happening. You don't
right,
see anyone really coming down here. So me growing up, I grew up in church, always playing an instrument or something like that. So me being in the church all the time, I got that kind of musician kind of aspect about myself. And then from there, I started trying to do what the sound guy was doing in the sound booth at the church. I'd like ask him a million questions like, what are you doing here? What is that? What is this? What is that? And then he finally kind of started giving me some tips and stuff because he didn't think I was serious about it, but I actually was. So later
Right.
on down the line, he ended up giving me, like, I was probably all of 12 or 13 maybe. He gave me this old PV soundboard, gave me a microphone and some other stuff out of his garage. He was a sound guy. He had a whole lot of sound equipment and stuff. So he gave me some of that stuff, and I'll never forget it. He gave me this old like 2-track thing, and
Mm-hmm.
it was tape. So he gave it to me, and when I figured out, when I was like 11 or 12 years old, how to record that microphone from that board into the tape and play it back, I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is crazy. Like, I was all of 11 or 12. I was so happy. I was stoked about it. Um, but I'll never forget that. But I kind of like started drifting away from that a little bit and then getting back into more into music. But from the age of 12, 11, 12 ish, I've always kind of like had that little feel for sound. But getting into the industry was a whole other thing. Like, then at this point, probably going into 15, 16 years old, I was still playing, but I got to this private school where they had this praise band. It was a Christian private school, and they ended up having a sound system there, and they had a director that was really into sound, and he was a great guy. Buddy, his name was Buddy Moody, really great guy, and he started teaching me, hey, you want to learn sound even more? I'm like, yes, I want to learn sound even more. So I started learning stuff from him, and then he started teaching me things that I should be doing to learn sound better here and there. So then getting towards like 11th, 12th grade,
Mm-hmm.
um, I decided, hey, no, actually, I skipped something. I skipped a huge mark of how I actually decided this is what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we all are probably familiar with like Hillsong, Younger Free, Jesus Culture, and stuff like that.
Right.
It was a huge conference going on in Birmingham, Alabama. It was
Okay.
the BBC, BCJJ, something like that. It's probably the biggest arena in Alabama, and it's
Right.
not even that huge, but it was the
Right.
arena. So I've never been to an arena at this point in my life. I've never seen an arena, never been to one, never been to a huge show at all. I'm probably like 17, 16 years old. I'm like in what, 11th grade, 10th grade ish, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, I was taken to a show there, a Christian concert that the school was paying for the praise man to go to. So I was in with the praise band, and I got down there to the show, and I saw this huge PA. I saw all the lights. I saw the huge stage. I lost it. Like my brain was just like, oh
Crazy.
my God, like I've never seen anything like this. And when the show actually started and I heard the first downbeat of like the music and it was like, I was like, oh, like that
Yeah.
was nuts. That was crazy. So when I first got that first feeling, that's when I found out, hey, I made the decision that day, hey, that's what I want to do. I want to be the guy behind that board that's making
Right.
stuff happen. Like
Yeah.
that's when I first learned that hey, that's what I want to do. And from there to 12th grade, uh, I said, hey, I want to go to school for this. I want to learn this. I want it to be a career. So I ended up going to Full Sail University,
Cool.
and I went there, got my bachelor's degree, and there was a crazy long amount of things happening there too. Um, I ended up getting at a church down there that a guy down here introduced me to the music director that was like the music director for that church.
Cool.
And it happened to be a really huge church. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. It's a nice church. It was called Faith Assembly of God
Mm-hmm.
or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So I got there, I was playing bass. I wasn't really doing sound there at all. I was just
Right.
bass. I was still a musician. I could play bass. I played drums. I played a little bit of keys too. So I could play and fill in. So I played at the church for all of probably 2 or 3 Sundays. And then this guy named Isaiah, that's like
Mm-hmm.
one of my best guys, like my best friends, like of all time. He came one Sunday and ended up he ended up getting me at his church. Like he ended up saying, "Hey, come over to our youth service or something." And then I met this guy over there, and he was from Alabama as well. It
Right.
was crazy. He lived right down the street from me, and I didn't even know it.
Crazy.
On the same street in Alabama, but he's the technical director for this other church,
Right.
and that church was bigger than the
Hmm.
church that I had initially got at. It was like a mega church. It was like 5, 6,000 seat sanctuary. It's
Oh
huge.
wow. Wow.
Um, so it because I'm saying all of this in this story to kind of get to the point of everyone asks me, hey, how do you get to where you are now? How? What do I need to do to make this happen and mix for all those artists like you do? And I have to say all the time, everyone's path is different because all the stuff that happened to me is probably not going to happen to someone else. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
so yeah, like I ended up doing this, and that guy, it was so crazy. It was like his nephew was the guy who taught me how to play bass, and I didn't even
Huh.
know.
Wow.
And he told me, "Hey, I was just talking to my nephew about you, and you just showed up here today," and it was crazy. I was
Right.
like, "Whoa!" Because his nephew is the guy who told me to go to Full Sail because he went to Full
Right.
Sail. So
Gotcha.
So I'm talking to this technical director here at this church called Calvary, and then he ends up hiring me off the bat of just because he thinks it's like a God thing happening. He thinks it's like I'm meant to be there right now. So they end up hiring me there, and now I'm the broadcast engineer for the largest church in Central Florida. So
Wow.
now I'm mixing broadcasts there, and I'm doing some bass gigs here and there at some other churches. And that took me mostly through college. I was at a few other churches, and that was great because he was the production manager for Fred Hammond, and he was
Okay.
the production manager for no, not the production. He was the monitor engineer, I think, for Pitbull for a little bit. And he was doing RF
Right.
for Pitbull. So it was crazy, like just getting that happening. So about a month after that whole shebang happened, this is probably my third month in college by now. All this is happening within 3 months of me being in college.
Wow.
So that happened, and then I ended up. Well, the guy who plays guitar for Justin Bieber lives in Montgomery,
Okay.
lives in Alabama. Well, he doesn't live here anymore. He used to live here. We were good friends. He played at some of the same churches I played at when I was here.
Right.
And he ended up getting on the tour with Justin Bieber, and I was like, "Whoa, that's crazy!" And everyone in the town looked up to him. He's a great guy. Still is a great guy now. And he was like, "Yeah." I asked him one day. I was like, "Dude, you guys sound so good. Like this is crazy. Like the audio was like monster level, like God
Right.
audio." And I was like, "Who mixes you guys?" And he was like, "This guy named Pooch and Ray Bo."
Right.
He mixed. They were mixing us or whatever. He wasn't deep into the sound stuff. He just played. That was it.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Right.
uh, I ended up looking up the engineer Pooch. He said
Mm.
I probably said Pooch, and then I looked up Pooch sound engineer, and YouTube or on Google. This is like my third month of college. I hit him up. So this is what happened. I'm trying to remember exactly how this all happened.
Right. Right.
I get it messed up. So Pooch, right? I figured out what his real name was, Ken Pooch Van Druten. So I
Right.
was okay. This is the guy who mixes for Viva. So I finally like found all of these videos of this guy. I was like, oh my god, this guy's like famous for sound.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So
Right.
and it's still my third month of college. I'm not a huge audio guy, but I know some things about audio. So he's this huge guy, and he's like the king of sound right now. So I'm like, I have to find him. I have to like email him or call him or something to kind of see if he can mentor me or anything. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. So I'm trying to find his phone number. I'm trying to find his email, all this kind of stuff online. And then probably after 1 or 2, maybe 3 days of searching him, I find his resume just floating online somewhere. So I
That's
found his
crazy.
resume, and at the top right hand corner, it had his number and
Right.
his email. So I was like, oh man, you know what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I emailed him first. I was like, all right, I'm gonna email him, and he, I'm like, yo. You like, I'm trying to see what did I say. Um, I was like, hey, my name is Ricky Ash. I was scared to type it anyway. I was like, I'm Ricky Ash. I'm an engineer in college. I am trying to learn how to do live sound more and more. I really want to do this. Something along the lines of that. Would you be interested in mentoring me or teaching me how you do what you do? And that was it. And I sent it. Waited like a week and didn't respond. I was like, okay. So I'm thinking, all right, let's take the next step of action. I called the number that was
Right, right.
like a week later, and then he answered. I was like,
It was actually his number.
I get his number.
That's
He,
crazy.
he said, Ken. I was like, hey, I'm Ricky. It was so funny. But
Right.
he answered the phone, and then he said, hey, what's up, man? How's it going? XYZ. And I told him, hey, I emailed you like a week ago. I know you're probably busy and everything. I just wanted to know if you'd be interested in teaching me and mentoring me, all that. And he said, sure, man. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. And I was like, whoa, wow. So on that one phone call, he gave me like 45 minutes to an hour of his time, just
Wow.
telling me anything that I wanted to learn from him. And it was just nuts. He was just blowing my mind left and right, just telling me all these things. And at that time, he was in Brazil doing something with Bieber, but he had taught me a lot within that time frame. So then he gave me his real email. He was like,
Right, right,
email that I actually received stuff at. And he was like, email me here anytime. And then he started teaching me from there. And then what ended up happening is all throughout college, he was my audio mentor all throughout college and
nice.
even to today.
Yeah,
So all the things that I've learned and the way that I've gotten ahead of a lot of curves was because of him. It's because that the guy who was doing the top shows, Jay-Z, Justin Bieber, Guns N' Roses, and all this
right,
stuff, was teaching me, like feeding me all this information. And here I go right back to school and practicing that information on all these consoles that's in Full Sail, like the SXL, SD7, SD,
right,
SD9, have all those consoles there. And every Tuesday and Thursday of Full Sail, you can go in and it's just called Open Lab. You can do anything you want. You can just
right.
fire up any console, fire up any tracks, and from like I think it's nine. It was 9 a.m. to like 7 p.m. You could do
Hmm.
that. Um, so that happened, and then I ended up getting hired when I graduated by Sound Image.
Cool.
So that was a long story. I'm not going to go down that whole rabbit hole, but
Right, right.
hired by Sound Image. And then from there, I ended up working for an artist called J Rock. He's a TDE artist.
Hmm.
And I ended up working for him. And that led to a lot of other stuff happening with me in TDE. So that's kind of how I broke into the industry. But it was some
Right,
other stuff going on behind the scenes that
right,
I didn't know about until probably recently, like a year. Like someone had already knew who I was and recommended me to Sound Image already before I even made my resume and sent it to them.
right, right, right.
It's kind of weird because what happened was I went straight out on the road
Hmm.
doing stuff for Sound Image. I didn't work in the shop or anything like that. I went straight out on the road with this guy. Um, and it was just kind of weird because the way that I was taught was that, hey, you have to work in the shop for like 2 years or X amount of years or months. Then you go out on the road and then you do these things. And it was kind of weird because I jumped straight out on the road. And then after that one gig of doing him, I did his US tour and his European tour, which was like a month apart from each other. So like back to back.
Right.
And and that ended up working in my favor because I did a good job in the U.S. and it did a good job on the European tour. And the company that hired me, TDE, they ended up liking me a lot, so they kept me doing all the other artists with TDE. So
Gotcha.
um, the only artist that I don't do for TDE is Kendrick Lamar.
Okay.
TDE is like the label for Kendrick Lamar. Um, SZA, Schoolboy Q, J Rock, Reason, Isaiah Rashad, like all those guys, I'll mix all those guys. And
Right.
whenever they're out on tour, and everybody except for Kendrick. I've done Kendrick on one occasion, but it was just when he got up on another artist's
Yeah.
set or whatever from TDE. So that's how I broke into this whole thing. And from there, it's just call after call after call after call, you know?
Right, right, right.
So yeah.
And I wanna remind everybody watching, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat because I am paying attention to the chat. But there's a few things that you touched on that I want to circle back to because we have sort of a similar come up in terms of we came through the church scene. Like that's how I learned and got started. Is through mixing in church and eventually branching out into the industry from there. But talk a little bit about how that helped you cut your teeth and develop your skills, because there's the education that you get at Full Sail, but there's that real life stuff that you talked about with mentoring with somebody like Pooch. Obviously, is has you can't put a number on that value. That's priceless.
Right.
But even before that, coming up through, because for those watching, if you've never been in church, then not every church is like very organized and refined, and you know what's gonna happen before it actually happens. A lot of church, a lot
Exactly.
of churches aren't that way. So talk a little bit about how that kind of affected your and sharpen your skills, if you will.
Um, so if any of you know anything about church as far as like a musician standpoint, I was raised in the Kojic, like Church of God in Christ, church, which is like very sporadic, very like you don't know what's gonna happen. You could have
Right.
rehearsed like 5 songs and you can sing none of those songs that Sunday.
Yeah, right,
The Holy Spirit moves and you're singing like 10 different songs that day. So
right,
in that aspect, that helped and molded me to become very flexible in whatever's happening. Um, so I ended up playing bass for a church once I got good enough at it. And me being a musician overall, I played drums first, then I played bass, then I played keys, then I learned a little bit of guitar once I got in high school. But learning all those instruments and then playing them in a church like that, um, it helped me a lot to know what's going on the stage on the other end of the snake. And I feel like that's something that's very crucial about an engineer is that you understand what's going on the other side of the snake musically. Um,
right,
because if you don't understand that, it's going to be a lot harder for you to translate the picture that they're trying to create. You know, so I think that's been the biggest part of how I became or how I'm becoming to be who I want to be, whatever.
right.
But yeah, that's one of the biggest things for me, being a musician.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what was the point for you? Because like when I listen to your story and I can, if I look back through my own story and most of the people I've spoken to in this program, there's a point where you can sort of pinpoint that was the point where I knew that I was meant to do this. So, because you go from knowing that this is what you want to do to knowing that this is what you're meant to do. What was that point for you? What was that sort of turning point that let you know, okay, this is what I am meant to do with my life?
I think I had that turning point when I was in college and when I was mixing. at Calvary. So I it was a previous engineer that didn't sound exactly like I sounded whenever I would mix, and whenever I got that instant, feeling or accolade or whatever of, hey, this guy is doing a better job than this guy or something. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but that's pretty much what it is.
Right.
You know, whenever you feel like you're making something better than the previous person was making, you start to get
Right.
this like, oh man, maybe I should be doing this or something like that. So um I feel like that's when I started getting the feeling that, oh man, I guess I this is where I should be at. Because music has always been a great thing for me. I've always loved music. Even to this day, I'll break out my bass every now and then or keys and play. Um, but I feel like that's what made me know that sound was where I should be at.
Right, right, right. And were your like I grew up in Jamaica. My parents were like, music is great, but it's not a real profession. So
Exactly.
it's cool that you can do all this stuff. It's fancy. That's
Mhm,
cool.
yeah, exactly.
That's what my mom used to say. Oh, it's so fancy, but you shouldn't be thinking of doing this with your life. Were your parents always, well, obviously you went to Full Sail, but I mean, were your parents always sort of supportive of that passion and wanting to pursue something in music?
Yes, they were always very supportive. Especially my mom. She's always said you can do anything you put your mind to, um, and always been 100% there. Even as a little kid, yes, she'd buy me drums and
Yeah,
all these little things to kind of help me along the way. Uh,
awesome.
and when she found out I wanted to go, she was willing to do just about anything. They got a huge loan and stuff to make sure that I got what I needed to go to college. I was just been really blessed to, you
Yeah,
know, to do this and be able to have parents that believe in you to do this.
right, right.
It can be difficult as a parent just thinking like, how are you going to make money, like real
Yeah,
money, with this
right,
job? Like, and it varies. It's not like a 9 to 5, and it's not
right.
like something that's permanent because these jobs are very well jobs that you can have one day and be fired the next day. And
Yep, yep.
I promise, even like now, look at us now, like we're in the hole right now.
Right, right.
But and I feel like other careers are in the hole too. But I feel like we are going to be on the tail end of people getting back to normal,
Yes,
um,
yeah, yeah.
as far
It
as normalcy.
Yeah, I was talking to my phone company, kind of explaining to them that, listen, my job is directly dependent on people being able to gather. Like, this is not,
Exactly.
it's not indirectly, it's not a restaurant. It's direct. If people can't gather, I don't have work because I can't. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting, and it's an interesting time. But I will say, God has been good, and we've all somehow have been able to continue to scrape through this time and use this time to do things like learn new skills and get better at what we do. You know what I mean? I thankfully I get to have this console behind me that I get to sit around every day and work on my craft and work on my skill. But it's been an interesting time, and of course we're learning lessons so that if this does happen again, there are things that we can take from these experiences throughout our life to put us in a different position if and when this does happen again. Take me back to your first big gig. Like what was that like for you? Were you like crazy nervous? Um, I mean, there is the benefit of, and for those watching this episode that are thinking about going the school route, because I went to school for recording engineering, so not necessarily live sound. I would encourage you, if you're thinking of going the school route, at least find a school that is gonna allow you to work on the gear that you're gonna be using when you're getting out. So there's definitely benefit of seeing an S6L, seeing an SD7 in a school lab setting before you get into the quote unquote real world, right? There's definitely some tangible benefit. And I'm lucky to know quite a few people that have come through the Full Sail program that are fantastic at what they do. Yourself, Brandon Blackwell's a good friend of mine. He's been a guest on the
Oh yeah.
program.
Good one.
And a few others. I know. I think Emmanuel went to Full Sail as well. Just
Yep.
there's a certain level of comfort in the real world because you've seen it all before. You know, my first gig out of studying recording engineering, I was recording all the vocals for Richard Brown, who is a Toronto gospel artist, and it was being produced by Daniel Witherspoon. And I'm sitting around a SSL 8000 Series G console running this recording session as a kid. But I'd seen that console every day in school. So it was like, it was just another day in the lab, right? So, but talk to me about like the that first notable, like, you know, we have landmarks throughout our career. So what was that first notable one like?
I think the first one was with J Rock. I feel like J Rock was like the first show we were in. I think the Irving Plaza in New York.
Uh-huh.
Um, it was like a theater type deal, probably like 2,000 cap kind of video venue, also all the way sold out. Um, I think well, as far as like in the industry like actually doing live shows, not church. I think the first like huge thing that I've done as far as people with like 5 or 6,000 people was like at Calvary at a
Uh-huh.
church. But as far as branching out and doing like shows that, hey, you be fired, like this is not
Yeah.
church anymore, you know,
Right.
was J Rock, and that was the first biggest thing that I did, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. And
Mm.
like when I've heard a crowd, because me, a church guy, I've heard people scream before, but I haven't heard people scream like a concert scream.
Right.
Like
Right.
a day, like a girl crowd scream at like 105, 110 dB loud. You know,
Right.
that definitely scared me a lot. But um, because I just having that whole thing happen in front of you is just it scares you a little bit if it's your first
Yeah.
time doing it. You're
Right.
screaming and you can barely hear the PA. You're like, is her mic on?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But I think the Irving Plaza was like the first thing that I did that I feel like that was notable.
Yeah. I remember going down to hang with Brandon downtown Toronto for Lizzo at the Budweiser stage. I told this story when I talked to him on the program too. It was so initially they had booked Rebel nightclub, which only holds about 3,000 people, and then it sold out so fast they moved it to the Budweiser stage, which is an amphitheater. So it holds 18,000 people, and it was sold out, right?
Dang.
And of course Lizzo is a largely female crowd. Um, Bro, when they started to scream, when the lights went down, I looked over at his smart meter and it was metering at 107 decibels. And I
Yeah.
was like, I leaned over to him and I said, glad I'm not you.
I'm telling you, it's a real problem.
Yeah, and he started to laugh and he was just like, yeah. And the thing is, in that shed, when you start to get much past 100 dB in the shed, the roof kind of really gets into play, and it starts
Oh,
to get really difficult in there. You that sweet spot is kind of 100 and 100, between 100 and 102. And I was actually in there maybe 2 weeks after with coffee and I'll never forget that story. I've never heard a crowd that loud. I was like,
yeah.
and we've done some big crowds like with Shaggy and the Marleys, but like because I guess of the low roof, the shed, and it amplifies that sound, and just again, it's like 80% women, so it's just the shrill of the screaming
Right.
was just like, man, this is insane. So I can, my brain jogs back to some of the big shows I've done too. But tell me about an experience that was just like hair raising for you. That was just like, whoa, this is crazy. So like the complete opposite spectrum now. Not necessarily nerves, not necessarily being scared, but just like, yo, something you want to pick up the phone and call mom and be like, yo, you never guess what happened today. What was that for you?
Oh man, I feel like I have a few. I feel like I have a good amount of those, like
Yeah,
of those kind of moments. Like, 'cause my mom, like, I always go and tell her like, oh, I just did this, or I just got this done, or hey, you know.
right.
But I think like something recently I feel like was the Digico thing. I did the locked up the Digico thing. I was like, oh, this is great, it's awesome. I'm doing that, and I went down to Florida, recorded it on the SD7, and that was something recently I did. Even when like I got hooked up with Waves because I do some stuff with Waves now. I've been doing stuff with them for about almost a year now, I think. And I when I first got my server and everything, I took a picture with it and all that. It was great. From mom about that. Even the Telefunken thing, I have like a relationship with them. Just kind of getting some stuff with them. And
Shout out to Connor. Shout out to Connor. Who I'm still waiting on
yeah,
my stuff. I hope he. Well, I'm gonna
man,
share. I'm gonna tag him in this. I'm gonna send it to him.
man, Telefunken is a great company, man. Like the guy that I use is his name is Jason.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, his name is Jason. I use him and
yeah,
gets me what I need and
yeah.
be great.
I gotta be honest. They do treat us very very well. They came down to so they're Connor and oh man, what's the other guy? But they're based up in Connecticut, and so we were doing a round of promo stuff with Shaggy, and we did a few. They came down. I think they came down when we were doing the Sting stuff too. But they came down to like Good Morning America live with Kelly and Ryan. We were promoting a song with Shaggy and Alexander Stewart. You. And so they came down, brought us some capsules. I called them up when we were heading out. When Shaggy was heading out on tour, I needed two more capsules. He sent me. They've just been really good to us. And of course, I think pretty much every Shaggy record that y'all have ever heard has been recorded on a Telefunken AK-47. So, um, yeah, there's a little bit of he's definitely a Telefunken guy. So, yeah, they've done really cool. They've been really good to us. I think for me that kind of hair raising moment, like I remember, so my first touring gig with Shaggy, which was like real time touring now.
Right?
This is it, right? 'Cause especially for a kid who grew up in Jamaica, you're touring with the only artist to ever sell diamond from like 10 million albums on one, like the Hot Shot album went diamond, right? So I remember heading to the airport like to go to Guam, and
Mm-hmm.
first of all, when the tour manager called me and told me I was going to Guam, I had to go look it up on a map because I had no idea where it was. I was like, Guam, what the heck is Guam, right? So yeah, I remember, man. I remember sitting in. I remember going to. I remember that entire experience, getting to the airport, getting dropped off, going through security. Like the whole time, it was just surreal. It was just like, I can't believe this is happening. And then the show went absolutely horrible. It was,
Wow.
yeah. I had gear malfunction. Like, first of all, when you get to some place like Guam, they don't. You use whatever they have on the island because it's not. They're so far out in the Pacific. Like it's not like they can just bring over a console or whatever. So Rider, everything went out the window. It was like an old Crest analog console, and every channel was distorting. Like all the caps were gone. Like the opener blew the fuse that was running the high end for the wedge in the center mix. So when Shaggy came out on stage, it was like he was singing under a blanket. He came,
Uh,
bro, he walked off the stage to me at Monitor World and yelled at me for like 5 minutes. I was like, yo, and then after the show, I get off the stage and he's like, yo, I know it's not your fault. Just have a good show tomorrow. And then the next day next morning we get on a plane, fly to the Philippines, and it was a great show. And here we are, 5 years later. I'm his production manager now, and still his monitor guy. So it's yeah, I remember it. But one of the craziest moments for me, 2018, when Shaggy had taken the year off to do the 44876 tour with Sting. Sting's crew was handling that. It was really Sting's tour that had been booked already, and then because they did the album together, they kind of added Shaggy to the tour. So they had limited kind of space and budget to bring us along, and so Sting's crew was handling that, and I got the call to go out on the road with Stephen Marley, and I remember. And there's a few experiences, but there's one particular that I'll never forget. We were playing the Greek Theater in Berkeley, um, and of course, for those who've never been to the Greek theater, like the entire backstage is stone. It looks like an actual Greek theater, and
Right.
the front part of the amphitheater before the hill is all stone, and it kind of really amplifies the sound of the crowd. And that night, he didn't have One Love in the set. Obviously, One Love is probably the most recognizable and the biggest hit from Bob Marley, and he sang it that night, and man, dude, that it was sold out, 10,000 people, and they were all singing at the top of their lungs. And when the song ended, the screaming, they were just screaming. And bro, I felt like every single hair on my body was just like standing
And
up. I was like, yo, I didn't even know what to do with myself. And a friend of mine, Kari Stevenson, who used to play soccer for San Jose Earthquakes, he was at the show, and he showed me a video. I was just like, I was at Monitor World, like I didn't know what to do with myself. I was just like, whoa, this is crazy. Man, I'll never forget that night. Like for guys like us who really love music, man, it experiences like those is like what we live for. You know what I mean? Being able to be that bridge between an artist and communicating with people who have spent their hard-earned money to come see a show. It's so special that we get to do what we do. So talk to me a little bit about your process, because I one of the things I always tell guys that I mentor, guys that I teach, is that the most important thing is process, because when you get into a situation when the nerves start going, the adrenaline starts pumping, your process kicks in, especially on stuff like a festival where you got a changeover, you got limited time to make sure that you are able to deliver that show that people have come to know you for, which is why you're in the job and in the position that you're in. You have to have a solid process, and that's one of the things you covered in your locked up with a Digico, and I was privileged to do that. Man, when Digico sent me that email, like I'm just about right
hey,
around my neighborhood. I was just like, what? Me? What you
me,
talking about?
you know, from out of
Yeah, yeah, man. I felt the same way. So, one of the things you covered was like your process of preparing for rehearsals and stuff. So, talk to us a little bit about that process, because I think that makes you uniquely you, but makes you so good at what you do.
right. Um, so if I get when I get a call from any artist, management or whatever, and they need to hire me to do some front of house stuff for them and all that, the first thing I ask for is the contact or email for the MD. No one else really. I mean, an MD and a production manager maybe. Well, definitely the production manager, but I'm really working in cahoots with the MD because the MD knows 90 to 95% of what I need. Um,
Right.
Not the production manager, not they don't exactly know because the MD will know something and will be doing something, and then later on we will tell the production manager, "Oh yeah, we're actually adding two more guitars and adding, these extra inputs." So I talk with the MD intimately, trying to figure out, hey, how many pieces of drums do you guys have? How many basses is he playing? Like, is he playing a Moog? Is he gonna play just bass, two Moogs, whatever? How many keys? And even guitars, all that stuff. And playback intimately, I dig into that a lot. With the playback engineer, I want to be in good standing with those people a lot of times because these shows these days are the sole center of these shows are based around playback a lot of times.
Absolutely.
So that those are the guys I'm talking to the most before we get to rehearsals because I'm very particular about how I like things stemmed out and how I like to. manage all that stuff going on. So after that's done, I'll come up with the input list, and then I'll go from there. I'll get to rehearsals, fly in or whatever, and then I'm talking to. Well, I mean, it depends on if I land there and I go to a production company, or if I land there and I'm going straight to rehearsal and the production company has already done most of the pre-labeling and all that stuff for me before I get there. So I use Sound Image to
Okay.
do most of my stuff, um, and I use them, and they do a really good job at making sure I have what I need. Jeremy Peters at Sound Image is the guy that I use.
Right.
And I'll talk to him and I'll give him a graph, or I give him. Well, at this point, when I ask him for something, he knows exactly what I want. I don't really have to ask him. And he's like, okay, two-way servers, this SD12, and you know
Right.
this stuff. So, and I'm talking to the production company a lot too. I'm making sure that I have all the gear that I need for that input list from the production company. So I'm talking to them about, and then first day of rehearsal, um, isn't really rehearsal. It's more of me getting the stuff together, or a tech or whatever, just getting all that stuff together, making sure it works, line checking stuff. So when the band comes in, everything is good. I'm just putting mics on stuff, and we're getting tones. Because even the first day of band rehearsal, like the actual band being there, they're getting their sounds, they're dialing in stuff, they're making changes and making patches and all that stuff. That's like the first day of band rehearsal. Then by the second day, I'm actually getting like full run throughs of at least one song or so, one or two songs.
Right.
Um, and then I start making like snapshots. A lot of times I don't really start like recording the information into the snapshots until like the second or third day of being in rehearsal, because I have all of my scope stuff xed out, and I will get the set list and I will make sure I have the set list right, and then I'll
Gotcha.
play the songs, and then after I feel like I've gotten a solid foundation of like my mic placement, my gain structure, um, mic choice, if I feel like something, a microphone needs to be changed or something. Once all that stuff is solid, and which within the first 2 to 3 days, all that stuff will be pretty solid. And
Right.
once all that is solid, I'll start making the auto what is it called, auto save or something like that. I,
Yeah.
yeah, auto save whatever on my snapshots, and then I'll start unxing stuff like faders and stuff like EQ and high pass, low pass filtering. I'll start kind of manipulating that stuff and letting that stuff recall in my snapshot stuff. So that's kind of my process of
Right.
doing that. And then once I come up with a good mix, I'll start sending them out and getting them out to people who need them and stuff. But sometimes I don't have time for that. I have to first or second day of rehearsal print out the whole rehearsal and give it to somebody, give it to a lighting guy, or give it to somebody and
Right.
just hear it. But yeah, that's about how I get things rolling from the time I get hired.
Right. What? So obviously, like, I mean, we've had some really good front of house guys on this program. Kenny Kaiser has been on here. He's a good friend of mine.
Oh yeah.
Danny Munoz has been here. Tim Hibbert.
Mm-hmm.
So a long line of guys that I'm privileged to call friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's that uniqueness for a Ricky Ashford rig? Like if I walk up to front of house and I don't know who the front of house guy is, what's always, I because I know different things change from gig to gig. You might change some microphones, you might change a capsule here and there, you might, but what's always there? What are we gonna see at front of house if it's a Ricky Ashford rig?
If it's my rig, you're probably gonna see a lot of screens. People will people like they dog me all the time. They give me the hardest time about it, but I don't care because I can see stuff on different screens, and I like that because I don't like having a laptop and having like two or three things running on it, and you have the page behind each other.
Right, right, right,
See what's going on. So I have Smart on one computer, I have Waves running on one computer or one screen, and I have multi rack. Well, now it's super rack, but I have
right,
that running on the screen. I have if I can get it, I will have Pro Tools running on a screen, or just the output page of what's it's called, the overview screen for
Right.
Pro. Yeah,
Right.
I have that going, and I mean that's about it. That's about the extent of what I use for screens and stuff. And then a wave server, you always see a wave server there. Waves is like my go-to as far as like effects and processing. That's my thing. Like I don't think I can live without it. Of course, I can live without it. I've made plenty of great mixes without waves. And I actually, when I was on this tour, the Schoolboy Q European tour, I was um I was out there and I forgot my key, my USB key in America.
Oh boy.
And I mean, I didn't need it for the show. I think that was part of why I left it. I was like, I don't even have my waves rig. I don't have anything out here to use that with because it's a mic, is a DJ, and two mics. Too
Right.
simple. So I mean, I'm not, and it was an M32 console that we were using for that thing. So it didn't even have a waves card in it. So I was like, oh, whatever. So I got there and I wanted to start practicing mixing. I was like, I don't even have my key card. So for that whole entire month we were out there, I practiced in my DAW just mixing
Right.
with plugins. And I'm glad that I left it because that very thing helped me a lot to just realize, hey, I don't need waves. Like I can do this. Like how good of a I had to start asking myself, how good of an engineer am I without waves? Without
Right. Right. Right.
how good am I without that? And I had to kind of re-solidify that, hey, I'm still good like without waves. If I don't have waves on the show, whatever. I can make it
Right.
happen.
Right.
I feel like that is what people need to pay attention to more. The basics, EQ, mic placement, high pass, low pass filtering, gain structure. Those like basic things are the things that people need to pay more attention of. Because when you get those things right, everything else will fall in line. You just have
Right.
those things right choice. Like all that stuff needs to
Right.
be right before you even start trying to EQ and compress and do
Right.
all things to make something sound good. So I think
Absolutely.
that is what I pay the most attention to, and I get a good result because the other end of the snake is taken care of.
Right. And for those who have watched more, not just this one of our learn from the pros, that's something that they've heard before. We've spent a lot of time talking about capturing it at the source. If people want to, I tell people all the time when I do podcasts or when I speak for other people, I say if you really want to know what matters to me, you look at the companies that I endorse. I'm a DPA master. First and foremost, if
Yeah.
it sounds good at the source, if it sounds good at the source, and I've had a lot of conversations with guys like Brad Divins, who's also a DPA guy,
Yep.
Eddie, Matt Holden from the Pitbull camp, Will.
Yep.
We're all good friends. I look forward to the DPA Masters dinner at NAM. It's a fun time, but I've always just felt like, man, listen, if you can capture it correctly at the source, if your drums are tuned properly, if you know all that kind of stuff, it I remember one time I was Emmanuel's watching, so he knows this story. He came out to a show. I was mixing Magic down in Orlando, and he posted a video on Instagram, and this guy hit me up and said, "Man, how do you get your toms to sound like that?" I go, "A DPA 4099 and a high pass filter," and he was like, "Yeah, whatever."
You
Like,
know what's crazy about that? I people ask me the same exact thing. How do you get that kick drum, that snare drum, or that tom feel to sound like that coming through the PA? And I will say, go up to the drum kit. I guarantee you, it sounds like that on the stage
exactly,
already.
exactly,
Now you just have to choose the proper microphone to capture that and make that
right,
same picture come back out. Of course, you're gonna have to do some EQ and high pass or low pass filtering or whatever, but that's the source. And me, I spend a lot of time with the drummers. You can ask any drummer that's been under me when I engineer or when I have to play. I will walk up to the drum kit in the middle of rehearsal and I will say, "Hey, let's make sure we have a conversation at the end of rehearsal or something." And if it's a guy I'm really cool with, I will talk to him. I talk back. I'm like, we need to tune those drums, because I
Right.
have to, and especially drummers. It doesn't. Every other musician, okay, cool. Like I mean, guitarists. I feel like guitarists and drummers are the people that we have to have the most intimate relationship.
Right, right.
Those are
Yeah.
the input
Facts.
that we use with like actual microphones on. And
Right.
microphones are like the biggest thing that varies. Like keys, not so much. That comes out sounding good. Playback, you definitely have to talk to those people. But drums and guitar,
Yeah.
you have to have an intimate relationship with those people, or you're not gonna get what you want at the end of the day. So I'm always constantly talking to the drummer and saying, hey, I think this be okay, or this is not good. And I like the drummer for Kiana. His name is James. He's a great drummer, and he is a guy. He's like the ideal drummer. He's always for the team. He's always for what's in the best interest of the whole entire picture. He said he's
Amazing.
like, okay, should this tempo be a little bit higher or lower because of the bleed coming from it or something? Dude, if we had more drummers like that, that would be great. Because some drummers are so anal and they're like stuck in their ways. Like, no, this is my setup and I'm not moving it. I don't care what you think. I'm not moving it. This is how I play. This is how I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, cool. But this guy, he's really cool about it.
That's awesome because the worst thing is when you have a drummer that sets up and then leaves no space for microphones. And
Exactly.
I had a conversation just like that with a drummer one time. It's like, this is how I play and this is how it has to be. I said, well, I guess we're not miking the drum kit because that's going to put two overheads over and it's
That's
going to
it.
sound
Oh, yeah.
terrible. You know what I mean? So at least for those watching, you guys notice that you'll notice that I haven't lied to you. Every front of house engineer that has come on here has said the exact same thing. The source matters. We should make T-shirts that say "source matters," because it's almost like people think that we have this magical processing chain for our kick drum
No.
to make it sound the way it does. I mean, guys, it really is like it really is the source. Yeah, we're just in the business of amplifying what's coming in. So if it's garbage in, it definitely is going to be garbage out. So um, I want to see if anybody who's watching has any questions. We got a good group watching today. So anybody got any questions before we wrap up? Any questions you got for Ricky?
Yeah, anything.
Um, while we wait for questions, what's next on the horizon for you? I mean, when we do get out of Corona, when Corona
Keanu,
dissipates.
so Keanu Lede, she's supposed to be going on a tour in I think October soon, and they called me about that, and I'm like, we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
it's supposed to be in Europe, and Europe is definitely doing a lot better than the U.S. right now as far
Yep.
as the whole
Yep.
COVID thing. They took it a lot more serious, so they're getting a lot more effective, results. So
Right.
I think that that's probably going to happen in October. I'm not at this point. Even 3 months ago when the stuff started happening, I said I'm not counting on anything anymore. It has
Right. Right.
million or huge shows. I'm not counting on it. I'm not looking forward to it until 2021.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because cause I don't want to be I don't want to get hyped up just to get let down. So
Right.
I have to kind of put myself in that mindset so that I'm not so sad when they say, "Oh yeah, we can't do it." So I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I don't really count on it anyway." But if it does happen, great. But actually, touching back on that kick drum thing, have you ever used a plugin called Low Air from?
I do. Yep.
I use that thing on kick drum
Yeah.
all the time. That and bass, I use
Yeah.
those on.
Yeah. I use it a lot on Keybase too.
Yeah,
If I mean in reggae we don't have a lot of Keybase stuff, but like on the coffee show that I was mixing a few shows for, he uses a Keybase on one or two songs I think, and I was definitely using that plugin a lot. Love that plugin. So that's a cool one. I will as we wrap up. I don't see any questions, so we'll start to close. I was laughing yesterday. I have become known for my position on a certain console that's not a Digico, and I saw a post yesterday about somebody added me to the Avid S6L experts group. I don't know how I got into that group, but
What?
I think somebody maybe thought it was funny to
Yeah.
add me to that group. So I saw, and Emmanuel's laughing in the in the comments because he knows what's coming. So they Ryan John, who's a great guy, shout out to Ryan, posted yesterday what people would like to see in sort of the next version of the S6L, and I kid you not, every comment was like something that already exists in Digico. So it was like nodal processing, like I was talking to Emmanuel and I said somebody should comment on this thing and just put make it a Digico. I was like, but if I do it, they're gonna kick me out of the group because they're already watching for me.
Oh, man.
The former Canadian distributor for S6L is not a fan of mine. So let's just say
Dude,
I'm
make it a digital.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was funny. I think somebody actually posted like because somebody was kind of trying to explain nodal processing without using the term nodal processing,
Oh,
and then somebody just put the link to the nodal processing video on YouTube. I was like, man, it was so entertaining. I was watching, I was looking at the comments. Ah, man, everybody, all my guys know exactly how I feel about that disc. But anyway, we're not gonna get into that today.
I got to
But
look at that.
dude, thank you so much for taking the time
Oh,
to do
fine, man.
this.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I will say this to the people watching as things start to slowly return to normal. I don't know how many more of these I'm gonna do. I definitely want to get in a lot of friends of mine that I think you need to hear from, guys that are doing it the right way and doing it big. Next week, I think we have Phil Strong, incredibly accomplished front of house engineer. He's also a Waves guy. He's mixed Mariah Carey, Kanye West, a bunch of big names, and just a fantastic guy to talk to. So for everybody watching, make sure to set it in your calendar. Join us next week at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time for another episode of Live Learn from the Pros. And until then, we want to tell you guys to take care, stay healthy, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again, Ricky.
All right, my man. Thank you.